Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. A few days ago we discussed the idea of never give up, never surrender. Basically, it's always possible that the opponent will make a bad move, a blunder to which you can use to your advantage. Today we're going to cover the same theme as both a caution and an opportunity to look out for. It's never too late to hang back rank mate. So let's have a look at this game. So quick look at the review first. So started off relatively well and then crash and burned in the mid game, and yet somehow I come back from the jaws of defeat. So what happened? Now, this game I played on a different platform, which is why the ratings are a little bit differently. I normally import onto the chess.com because I like looking at the analysis. And this was also a much more rapid game than I'm normally used to. Usually I play 30-minute games. This was a 10-minute game, and towards the middle and definitely towards the end, I was completely out of time. And in fact, I finished this game with only seconds left on the clock. So let's have a look at the analysis. Here we are. All right, so I played white, opponent black. As usual, I start with e4. The opponent decided to start with pawn to c5, so the Sicilian defense. Now, to the Sicilian defense, I've taken up to playing the Grand Prix attack. I see some thematic opening similarities between it and the Vienna, so it feels quite familiar to me. So knight to c3, and then some development and the early move of the f pawn to f4. So again, some similarities in ideas here between the Grand Prix attack and the Vienna game. Opponent keeps developing. I develop my other knight. They push their pawn to try to fight for the center. And at this point, one of the things with the Grand Prix attack is to try to potentially get rid of that knight. And so bishop to b5, pinning the knight, and as soon as the bishop is attacked, to take the knight. That's what I do. And they sort of ask the question about what I'm going to do with the bishop right away. Take the knight, captures back. And now I've got a nice pawn chain. They advance their c pawn, I castle, and the opponent moves their bishop to b4, again attacking the knight. I'm not too worried about that. So pawn to a3. What are you going to do? They decide to withdraw, which is fine by me. At this point, I'm out of really knowing what was the best sequence of moves. I saw a potential, fork between the bishop and the queen. I suppose that was a reasonably obvious move. Opponent definitely saw it, and that does actually cause a problem because it pins that knight. So I responded to that by developing my bishop to unpin the knight. Opponent develops their knight, and at this point I needed to find some way of moving the knight out of that position, or have at least the option of doing so. So I decided to move queen to e1, but after on reviewing the game, it does make a lot more sense to actually move the bishop to f2, allowing the queen to remain on the d1 square. Nonetheless, even though that was a bad move, the opponent helps me equalize by making a bad move of their own with queen to d6. I move my queen now to g3, thinking that I might have an attack on the g7 pawn. The opponent blocks that with knight to g6. Here I attack the queen, forcing the queen to basically return to their starting square. Here I capture the pawn with now an attack on the queen. They captured that piece, but that's okay. I was reasonably happy with these series of moves. Opponent now attacks the knight, and the most logical place is to move the knight back, which is what I did. So I was reasonably happy with my decision. I felt I was doing reasonably well. Now, very soon, I'm going to start making some bad moves. And about this time, I was really starting to run short on time, while the opponent had managed their time management quite a bit better than me. Queen now attacking the knight, and again, sort of similar sort of dynamic to the bishop before, which I didn't really like. The queen was also simultaneously attacking the pawn on b2, so I moved the rook to b1, play castle. Wasn't too sure what was the best next move, so I decided to connect 4. On analysis, that push of the pawn to f5 gives some good winning chances. They move their f pawn. And here I thought that I might have an attack on the queen. I wasn't sure, I wasn't very comfortable with making that attack, but now retrospectively, that was actually a good move. And at this point is where I make my a serious mindless blunder. I was wondering where best to move the knight. I sort of decided that retreating the knight to c3 would be the most logical move, and yet somehow I ended up moving the knight to c5, which straight out hangs the knight, completely mindless. As soon as I moved it, I was wondering what on earth was I thinking. Opponent captured right away. Not very happy here, so I decided to just lash out with the pawn to b4. Now, the opponent could have done en passant, but they didn't. Instead, they decided to retreat the retreat the queen, which was good for me. I pushed the c pawn now to just close off that part of the board. The opponent retreats their queen further. I decided to push my pawn further, thinking that I would have some chances of potentially trading a pawn for a piece if I kept pushing that b pawn forward. Captures up to attack the queen. Again, I didn't really see that advancing pawn now had an attack on my queen, so that wasn't okay. I had to capture. But that, of course, allows the queen to move out of the way. Now, at this point, I miscount the number of defenders the opponent has on that square. So I decided to capture, and here I thought I had, that I would be able to do an okay trade. But of course, this does not work because there's 3 here, while I only have 2. I didn't really recognize I'd miscounted until I made the move. Terrible move. I can't capture that back, really. So now, at this point, I am down a rook and down another piece, a minor piece, knight. I was thinking I'm definitely losing here, but why not? Play on. I only had, I think, about a minute left on the clock at this point. So just play on, captured a couple of pawns. The opponent sort of doubles up their rooks. That looks pretty good. I sort of retreat the queen to defend the king. Here they make a interesting move. Here I'm thinking I'm close to losing. I am very close to losing. Nothing to do. Push the pawn. They moved one of their rooks down, push the pawn, they capture. I capture back with the king to allow the queen to remain in that position. And they move the other rook down to check. I move the king up. And extraordinarily here, the opponent decided to go hunting. So it captured my pawn. Now, here I thought the opponent gave me an opportunity because I could take that pawn with check. Now, if I did that, the most obvious move that the opponent had would be to move their king inwards to f8, and then I'm lost. I'm done, pretty much. I don't really have many choices after that. But I did notice that with the king in this position at the moment, the queen cannot defend, because the queen can get here, it can get here, but that doesn't defend against check. The rook, similarly, has no ability to defend against check either. So I thought, is it possible is it possible that the opponent could make a blunder? Well, you have to be in it to win it, so check. And I think the opponent here was just careless. They had minutes left on the clock, and rather than thinking things through, moving the king to f8, they moved away from check. And it's never too late to blunder and lose a game, because that is check, can only be blocked by the knight, and then checkmate, a back rank checkmate. So check, great move, though it's the obvious move. Forced defense by the knight, but that only delays the agony by one move. Checkmate. I was so happy that I won this position. Good game. GG to the opponent. One of the learnings from this game is that you always need to keep an eye on that back rank, the opponent's and your own. If you're in the luxury of being in a winning position, holding on to your enthusiasm and sparing a move to give your king an escape square can prevent a disaster. It's never too late to hang a back rank mate. I hope you enjoyed the game, and thanks for watching.